Yes.
You
So
broke a bit. Is it
how
difficult?
difficult is it to for organizations to be held accountable for how racist or anti-racist they might be?
Well, again, if you want to speak from a FIFA point of view, we all watch football. We watch football and the matches as much as we can, but it is for these member associations to be able to report and forward these reports to FIFA if they feel that FIFA needs to handle this. Because, don't forget that FIFA is a governing body, and you've got member associations. You've got the English FA. You've got, every continent has their member associations who really are vested with the responsibility to be able to handle situations. If it becomes unmanageable, maybe when we get to the highest stage, when we're playing maybe a UEFA competitions or anything, and then you've got incidents of racism, that's probably where FIFA would get involved. And when it does get to that point, then of course we will take appropriate actions. But I think that it's every member association responsible for their continent, for their environment, to be able to take the necessary steps. And it is a language that is universal. It's an uncompromising language. Racism is not acceptable. Discrimination is a zero tolerance. Gender, all discrimination is zero tolerance. So that really is, with the member associations in every country and every continent, to be held responsible. Really, they should be able to be the ones that should stamp out. The message filters down, and they should be able to take control of situations. And if it becomes uncontrollable, and like I say, when you come to the bigger platform, when it's qualifiers, or you get onto the World Cup stage, but even before then, that's where perhaps that FIFA, not even perhaps, where FIFA will come into play. But I think member
Yeah,
associations be able to control their own situations. Again, I have to say, discrimination, all levels, all forms of discrimination, be it race, gender, every form of discrimination is zero tolerance, non-acceptable situation. And I'm so very
absolutely.
happy that there's a lot more noise now being made about this, but clearly not sufficient. We ought to do a little bit more, perhaps.
Sure, sure. Thank you. Well, Fran, are you aware of? I mean, there are organizations that do go through the motions when they're compelled to by activism and by a new wave of activism and pressure. But how are we able to tell whether those efforts and those actions are authentic or are just kind of trying to do the bare minimum?
It's a brilliant question. And I think there's so much these days of sort of washing any agenda and trying to do the right thing because it looks like the right thing, or actually doing the right thing. And those are two very different approaches. And it's I think in the past, organisations have been able to get away with just trying to be seen as doing the right thing, but that just doesn't cut it anymore. And I think in the world that we live in, that is more connected, there's more ability for real people to speak out, that organisations that just try and kind of fake it really are going to get found out, and people will not have the same level of respect to them. One thing that I would like to say on this though, which I think is important, is my whole kind of approach and thought of this follows very much the approach of Peace One Day. And in fact, it was when I heard Jeremy's TED talk about a decade ago, it completely inspired me and said, if we want peace one day, we have to start with one day at a time. And I think it's exactly the same when it comes to racism, that we have to start not necessarily one day at a time, but one relationship at a time. And so organizations that are maybe speaking, I would question, how many relationships have they changed? How many human connections have they made where they've started to shift people's perspectives and their prospects at the same time? And that's what I think we should be looking at. We should be measuring not just what people are saying, but and not even just what they're doing, but how that is disseminating through their organization. Because one relationship at a time is how we will fundamentally change racism, when we start shifting those hearts and minds, perspectives and prospects, to make that real difference and actually to make the change that will last.
Thank you. Well, look, we only have a couple of minutes, but there is an important question I want to get everyone's insight, however concise, on. It's the relationship between sport, racism, and conflict. So I think, Aisha, you touched upon, conflicts that exist in your part of the world, and now conflict has become a widely discussed issue with regards to racism, given what's going on in Ukraine. But of course, we're seeing conflicts all over the world, and I wonder what role sports has to play in not only kind of easing situations of conflict, but also in exposing and then helping combat issues of racism that evolve out of that. So, Kashif, do you want to say something about that?
Yeah. Well, listen, this is a subject that I could go on and on and on, because this is, my story.
Just
my
1 minute,
journey,
if you don't mind. Okay.
Yeah. So, look, again, like I said, football speaks several languages. Football represents everything. It's a unifier. Okay, in wars, in my country, Sierra Leone, I know that the role football played in football in particular played in unifying. I know how I came into football governance. It was, getting, kids that were displaced as a result of the war, and orphan kids, and now it is a Premier League club, and et cetera, and I became an FA president, and I am now where I am in football. It was through football, it was through strife, it was using the language of football to unify, to create peace, to change the narrative, to change the language, the perception, everything. And to cut out discrimination, be it ethnic or what have you. And I used football as that tool. And that's why and where I am today. So, like I said, I can't fit that in 1 minute. Football is powerful, and we should continue to use that, football, sports. But again, I want to add this. With discrimination, don't let us limit it to just race. Because, discrimination is all about fear and it's ignorance. And that is why people react the way, and they segregate and they undermine and they act in the way. It's just ignorance and fear. But football has a language, that communicates to all, and it cuts down these barriers. And we should use that even more, and use that as a real powerful tool. And I commend everybody that has been on board, the English FA, FIFA especially. But we cannot do enough, and we can't do it on our own. We need the member associations. We need all the other organizations like Cash's organization, Football for Peace, and every other organization that understands that football is a language that, it's a language for all. Everybody understands it, and it's a tool that we can use for unifying. So thank you so very much.
No, thank you so much for that. Fran, so you, on the one hand, we have a lot of institutional racism in sports. On the other hand, sports can be such a unifier of people, as Aisha mentioned. What do you think of this contrast? Any final thoughts to end our conversation?
I think maybe my final thought to end this conversation is, anybody watching this, don't think that this is just about big organisations. Don't think that this is just about sports. This is about every single person stepping up and doing what they feel is what they should know is the right thing to do, but actually not thinking this is someone else's job, this is someone else to lead the way. We all have to play our part, and we all can play that part. That's the decision that I've made with my organisation. We are committed to helping get as many people into relationships, connections and relationships with people that are different from them, so they can start to break down those barriers. And the more people that step up, the better we will all be, and the better we will move forward together.
Thank you very much indeed. And thanks to all the panel for such a powerful discussion. And don't forget, if you want to find out about the work of the organizations and individuals that we've been speaking to today, you can find more information at the Anti-Racism Live 2022 page on peaceoneday.org.